Hey students, it's me, Mr. Fitz. Here's a video on interest rates. And so we're just starting our unit on finance, which could be better thought of as like money and how money works. So we'll start off with the most fundamental thing, which is interest rates. And what are interest rates? Well, so if we think about like these two institutions or people or whatever they are. So we have this institution, it could be a bank, it could be a business, it could be a person, and then we have this person or business or whatever it is that needs money. And so they say, hey, I need some money. They say, oh, I have some money, so I'll loan you some money. So they're going to loan them money. And the amount that this person borrows and the amount that this, whoever this is, loans is known as the principal amount. So that is something that you definitely need to know. That's just the amount of money that is changing hands on a loan basis. So this is the principal amount. And so you could be either side of this transaction, right? You could loan somebody money, and we'll talk about that, or you could be the borrower, right? So you could be either one of these. So it's good to know this from both perspectives. So after time, whoever this person or entity is, they need to pay back that principal amount. So that whatever that dollar amount was, or whatever currency it's in, they're going to pay that back, and they're going to pay them interest on top of that. And we'll talk about what that is and why. So first of all, what is the definition of interest? So interest is the charge for the privilege, and this is usually as an annual percentage rate. And so we'll talk about it, and we'll see some examples of that. So it's generally known as the APR. So definitely write this down. Make sure you have it. Okay, so that's interest and interest rates. So let's look at some examples. First off, there's simple interest. And what is simple interest? Well, it's simply interest. And so here's the formula. I, P, R, T. So that's P times R times T. I is the interest, so the total dollar amount of interest, not to be confused with the interest rate. So it's just the dollar amount, the total interest that whoever's receiving at the end. P is the principal amount, so that's the amount of money that's exchanged hands on that temporary basis. And then R is the interest rate in percentage terms. And then T is time over years, generally years. So here's an example. If you invest $3,500 in a savings account that pays 4% simple interest, how much interest would you earn after 3 years? And what would the new balance be? All right, let's take a look. So here we have our principal amount, that's $3,500, and we have our interest rate, which is 4, and we have T times 3 years. Okay, let's just use that formula. So we know P is 3,500, we know R is 4%, or we could say it's 0.04, remember that, and T time in 3 years. So my total amount of interest is principal, 3,500, times the annual percentage rate, right? That's generally what interest rates are expressed as, 0.04%, 0.04, I should say, 4% per year, times 3 years. So what does that equal? $420. So that would be what? 1/3 of that would be what? $140 a year, right? So over 3 years. So each year they're going to get $140. Okay, that's simple interest. And here are some examples of things that pay simple interest. CDs, or certificates of deposit. You could go into any bank and get a CD. Generally, they just pay a simple interest over certain periods of time. Sometimes they pay out annually. Sometimes they will pay the interest just at the end. It's something you have to ask the bank and see what they're going to pay you. So basically what you're doing when you get a CD from a bank, or you're depositing money in a savings account, you're loaning the bank money, right? That's really what it is, and it's the privilege. They're going to pay you that interest for the privilege of borrowing your money, right? They have your money for a certain amount of time. They're borrowing it from you. You could buy U.S. Treasuries. That's the same thing. The government is borrowing money from you if you buy a U.S. Treasury bond. And then you have agencies, and we can talk about these different types of bonds if you want. We have corporate bonds. They would be like AT&T would be, I don't know if they're AAA, they're probably AA. Microsoft might be a AAA. And then it's just based on the credit rating, the number of A's they have. Municipalities, that'd be like the state of New York, city of New York. I think city of New York might be a AA, I can't remember. Single A, municipals. And so these are all just municipal bonds. Agencies, those are government agencies like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all those fun things. So anyway, if you have more questions about that, let me know. So let's look at some other examples. Compound interest. All right, compound interest. This is very important for anybody that's thinking about getting a credit card. Most credit cards have compound interest, and we'll talk about some examples now. So this is the formula. Definitely write this down. A equals P times, in parentheses, 1 plus R over N to the NT. And I'll explain what all that means. A is the final amount in dollars. So as we're not talking about interest anymore, this is actually principal plus interest. So that's the final amount that the person would either owe or be getting at the end. P is the initial principal amount. That's the initial amount that was borrowed, the starting amount. R is the interest rate, and that's an annual interest rate. And we'll talk about that more when we see some examples. N is the number of compounding periods per year. So if it compounds annually, that's just 1. And then so this gets a lot easier, right? Because this would be just 1 plus R, because R divided by 1 is just R. And if this is 1 times T, that would just be T. So annual compounding is the easiest. If it were, say, quarterly compounding, this would be 4 and this would be 4. So you would divide the interest rate by 4 and then multiply the number of years by 4. If it were semi-annual, that would be 2 and 2. Monthly, 12 and 12. We're not going to talk about like daily compounding or continuous compounding. They generally don't happen. Maybe for some credit cards you'll see daily compounding. I'm not sure. Read the fine print on a credit card. So let's look at an example. Let's say I borrow $10,000 for grad school. What do I owe after 4 years if I make no payments? So these are the current loan rates that I looked up just the other day. So if I'm going to grad school, it's an unsubsidized loan, meaning it accrues interest while I'm in school, and it's 5.28%. Good news is school loans are generally simple interest and they don't compound, but we'll look at it both ways just in case it did. So unsubsidized, again, earns interest while you're in school. Subsidized does not accrue interest while you're in school. So 5.28%, I'm going to grad school. That's the interest rate. So what would be the simple interest rate? You can try this on your own if you wanted to pause the video. Oh, I just gave you the answer, so never mind. So here's the simple interest rate. I equals PRT. So it's 10,000 is the principal amount. The interest rate is 0.0528, and T is time, which is 4 years, right? And so that would be $2,112. That's what I would owe in interest. So if I add my principal of $10,000 to that, I would owe $12,112 after 4 years. So there you go. I would owe not only the principal that I borrowed of $10,000 plus the interest, which would be $2,112. Let's look at what compounding would do to this. So let's say I compound this annually, meaning I would have to pay interest on the interest. So how much does that increase this amount? So if it's annual compounding, meaning it's every year, so I'm going to have my interest and then it's going to compound on that. So, and we looked at this a while back when we talked about exponential growth. So P is my principal amount, 1 plus R over N to the NT. And in this case, we're going to say N is 1 because it's annual compounding. So it'd be 10,000 times 1.0528, which is 0.0528 is my interest rate, to the 4th power. So remember we looked at that with exponential growth. It's just 1.0528 times 1.0528 times 1.0528 times 1.0528. We do that 4 times, and you get $12,285.24. So that would be the total principal and interest that I would have to pay. So what was my interest? $2,285. So that's substantially more than the $2,112 that I had to pay without compounding, right? So you're probably saying, oh, that's only like $200, Fitz. That's not that much. Well, if you think about it, and this is only over 4 years, it does exponentially grow. So, and we'll see another example. So I'm going to look at this with quarterly compounding and see how much bigger it is. So with quarterly compounding, if N is 4, what does that do to this equation? Well, so I'm going to divide the interest rate by 4. So 5.28 divided by 4 is 1.32, or 0.0132. So that would be 1.0132, and then 4 times 4 is 16. So I'd raise that to the 16th power. Notice that then changes that to 12,334.54. So as you can see, the more compounding periods you have, the more this is going to grow. So that's basically how compounding works. And we're going to have a lot of practice with this. And we're going to have another video that shows you how to do this with the Delta Math questions. Also, we're going to have some practice in spreadsheets as well. One thing I also wanted to talk about is nominal interest rates, because some of you are probably like, why would you even charge somebody interest, right? What's the big deal? Just, hopefully they pay you back. Well, there's a number of things that go into the interest rate calculation. One is, how credit worthy is that person? Do you think they're going to pay you back? If not, then you might want to charge more interest, right? To take on that risk of them not paying you back. The other thing is the inflation risk, and so that's like the difference between real interest and nominal interest is really inflation. So I'm not going to get into a huge talk about inflation because that's more of like an econ topic, but really inflation, right, the cost of goods is going to go up every year. So it's more expensive for you to buy something later than it is today. So if I'm going to loan somebody money, I'm going to need a little extra money coming back because the dollars they're returning to me aren't worth as much, right? I can't buy as much with those dollars or whatever currency it is that I could before. So when we think about an interest rate, nominal interest rates are the real interest rate plus the rate of inflation. So I like this bullet point 3 here. Here's a really good example. So if a saver is receiving a money rate of interest of 6%, but inflation is 3%, then their real return is only 3%. Meaning they're getting 3% on top of inflation. So that's really what that comes down to. So we're not going to talk too much about real interest rate, negative interest rates, but I just really wanted you to focus on that. So you can kind of read through this. This is like a really important concept for you to understand, is that interest is really like trying to make up for inflation in a lot of ways, and risk. So those are the two kind of things that are factoring into interest rates. So I hope this helps. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for watching. Bye. Womp womp. I actually want to start this over because there was something I wanted to talk about. Okay, interest rates take 2. Hold on, my glasses are